Yo, YouTube, how are we doing? It has been too long. Ever since I burned out from the Year of Loot thingy because just pain from Jagex on updates and stuff. Anyway, I'm doing a video because I'm going to playtesting for Raids 3 in 3 days. And after that point in time, I can't make videos like this. I get killed. I will simply be removed from the game. So I thought it'd be a nice time to just make one. I kind of wanted to do one anyway, but it's really my last opportunity to, and there's some other stuff I'd like to talk about as well. So I will get into playtesting, but I want to go through plan for like the day one and the few days following of what we're going to be doing as far as like actual raiding, predictions, which is the fun part, I guess, and playtesting, which is just like what's happening, what we're doing, what's going to happen, and how much impact can we have. So basically, as far as the plan goes, this is already kind of cool. We've assembled a super team of 8 content creators, and it is going to be an 8-man raid as far as we know. So hopefully all of us are going to be able to go in on day one and try and get a couple of completions as a team. And it's partially just for like the big hype squad unit of just epic players, but it's also just so that like everybody who knows, like if you don't know the people in this team, you don't play the game kind of thing. So you get a really nice range of players to watch and get to see the interactions between the group, at least for the first few KCs. It's going to be a lot of fun. And regardless of really what happens after the first like completion, it doesn't matter too much if we stay together. Some of us, including myself, would like to do some solos on day one. And I'm sure we will do, because, and I'll get into this a bit later, it probably won't be that difficult. As far as content goes, it'll probably be easier than Raids 1 and TOB. But hold your horses, I know what you're going to say, that's too easy, but we're going to get to that later. And this idea of the team splitting up and doing stuff, that's all fine. And what we might do over the next like few hours will be like a couple of team raids, go split into solos, duos, trios, whatever, give it a bit of a test, see what's up. I will absolutely be milking the hell out of it with a playtester does Raid 3 title and all that. But it's worth noting that as a playtester, I'm not allowed to stream until there is a completion. So I'll be going live after a first completion occurs, and then I'll be able to discuss some of the mechanics in detail, or at least what I know at the time. And because I can't talk about any of that prior. So yeah, and after that, like first few hours of messing around, we'll probably go and play with some of the friends that we know and all that. It's literally just like the first 1 or 2 raids as the content creation team, and then we're going to split up and do our thing. And then, you know, I mean, obviously it's the big raid. It's going to be there for 6+ months easily in terms of content, I hope, fingers crossed. So we'll probably just do runs between the players for at least a couple of days, I hope, and then split off and do whatever groups seem to be relatively efficient or efficiently fun, I guess. Either way. So that's at least the first day plan. And again, I'm just not allowed to stream until we have a completion. Not we, but like there is a first completion, and then I can press the go live button. But there's so many people to watch. It's going to be fantastic. Now, I think this is worth mentioning because it's something that it kind of annoys me, but it's also like interesting to note, and that is the difficulty of the raid is not going to be that hard in comparison to TOB and Chambers. And we're talking about a base level difficulty, like when you go in for the first time, this is what it's going to be like. And the best way to liken this is, imagine you want to do Corrupted Gauntlet, and that's actually kind of difficult content. Well, to do that, you have to unlock it via doing regular Gauntlet. And no one would ever say that regular Gauntlet's too difficult, right? That's kind of where we're at with Raids 3 at a base level. So here's the thing. Don't get your expectations up for the base difficulty of the raid. Because the interesting part of Raids 3 is all about the invocations. And this is the big selling point of Raids 3, where you can tack on difficulty, which also, hopefully, I think this is how it works, increases your drop rate of items. So as an example, this isn't like a confirmed one, this is just an example. If you go into the raid with 0 invocations, your drop rate for like any given item might be like a 1 in 50. But if you go into a raid with invocations on, let's say you put 2 out of 20 on, and these 2 invocations are like, your prayer drains a bit faster, and you're limited to 80 HP, just as an example. I don't know if these are real things. Then suddenly your drop rate goes from a 1 in 50 to a 1 in 45, or a 1 in 40. And then you start putting more and more and more on, and suddenly your drop rate goes down and down and down until it's like a 1 in 5. And by the time you have all the invocations on, maybe you're limited to like 20 HP, 50 prayer, it all drains instantly. If an NPC hits you, you die immediately. There's shit flying around the floor. You got to dodge this, pray every 2 ticks, move correctly, switch your gear ticks. That's what it could be like, right? And this is where the fun of Invocations hits, is that it allows them to add on mechanics that they wouldn't normally do. So you can think of it as a bit of scaling difficulty that you're allowed to choose. So unlike hard mode Top and challenge mode Chambers, instead of letting the game just be like, here's the base level and here's the CM level, good luck, you can decide how difficult the raid is yourself. And better than that, you can tailor it to how you want to play. So as an example, this is something I really dislike about the game in certain places. This pertains to an idea of mechanics I call Annoyance Mechanics. And something like this would be Fasani's melee. When Fasani melees you, you're going to hit like an 80. Hits you like an 80, right? That's an annoyance mechanic because it hits you so frequently, you have to pay attention to every attack. It's really hard to react to it unless you've done like a massive amount of Fasani, or you're on a client or something. And if you're doing the prayer switch phase, you have to be even more careful watching. It's just annoying. It's not something that requires a lot of skill to click melee pray, but it requires your attention. I call that an annoyance mechanic. So for the example, maybe if you want to take it nice and chill, you don't have to add on any of the invocations that would classify as annoyance mechanics. And suddenly it's a pretty straightforward raid where, I don't know, like much like Chambers or Tob, who, if you've done any amount of Chambers or Tob, it's not that difficult really. Let's examine like maybe Verzik P3. You go in, and if you're on the team and you're not the guy who's tanking in a regular TOB, you just click the boss until webs happens. That is hands off, zero brain. Oh, is my HP okay? Did I get meleeed? We're fine. The only person who has an annoyance mechanic is the guy tanking. And this is the example. Maybe the base level of TOA, raids 3, is like as if you were not tanking Verzik, and maybe like if you add an invocation, now you're tanking Verzik. You have this little annoyance mechanic. But because you can choose this, you can choose whether you want it to be AFK or a bit more difficult for a better drop rate. And you can add on so many of these things that the gameplay and what I've been looking to call like sort of a skill ceiling expression, you're allowed to express the skill ceiling. You're allowed to add on these things that make it harder. And we don't know how far it can go, only that it will hopefully take it beyond Inferno in terms of difficulty. But this is the cool bit, but it also means that don't get too hyped up about the base level. I think pretty much every single team that tries to get a first completion will probably get a first completion. That's just quite likely, I would say. And that's not a problem again, because the guys who you want to be watching for the content and like for the difficulty of the challenges it's not the content creation team. It is maybe for the first like raid or two, but like maybe 4 hours in and there's a dude on like 10 viewers on the Twitch channel and he's got like max invocations and he's soloing and he's got this ridiculous drop rate of like a 1 in 5. That's the guy you're gonna want to go watch. That's the content that's really interesting. Because no one else is going to do it. Hopefully no one's going to be doing max level invocations. Hopefully. Anyway, that's the whole invocation spiel. It's really cool. It's a great mechanic, and there's a lot of potential for it. With any luck, we're going to have a little bit of a say as to like what invocations are good and what fits well. And this is where the part of the playtesting kind of stuff comes in. So outside of what we're sort of already doing, I've kind of broken down 3 categories, which I personally think are really important. And the first one is replayability. This stands out to me. I hope it's a replayable raid in the sense of it doesn't just get boring. Now, most bosses in the game are built such that you can grind them over time. I mean, it'd be a bit silly if it wasn't. And the only boss that is not particularly much like that is typically Fire Caves and Inferno. And that's pretty much only due to a lack of reward. But you also don't really fancy doing bosses that are incredibly tedious and or incredibly time consuming. So like a regular nightmare of 20-minute kill solos, and it's got annoyance mechanics. And then like Inferno, which you have to learn over and over, and you get your cape and you're like, I never want to go back there. Yeah, so you got to have a think about how easy you can scale it, what invocations you can put on. But having a level of replayability is very important. And making sure that the player can choose which annoyance mechanics they put on so that the rest of the raid is learnable and then AFKable. And I'm using AFK in the sense of like brain off. You can just click and it's cool. You can grind it. Yeah. And then the second one was diversity and balancing of invocations. Now this is I've already talked about this, but like having lots of them, some annoyance mechanics, some not, some like direct difficulty, some direct stat increase. Hopefully not defense. I definitely won't be wanting any stat defense increases. But having like more damage on the NPCs, not a crazy amount, but like maybe double damage wouldn't be too crazy. Having, I don't know, more mechanics come into play. So again, the example for P3 Verzik was that maybe there's an invocation that allows a boss to melee you that it wouldn't otherwise. So in the Verzik scenario, it could be you're sitting there and your teammate's tanking, and if you put the invocation on, suddenly you're tanking. You gotta be mindful of it. And the third one was opportunity of skill ceiling expression. So replayability, diversity and balancing of invocations, and opportunity of skill ceiling expression, which does stem from the invocations, but it's important to make sure they're hard enough that if we're at playtesting and we can just breeze through it on max invocations, there's a bit of a problem. And the way I see it is that it's okay to have invocations and to have so many of them that if you had them all on, you would simply stand no chance. Doesn't matter who you are, how long you practiced for, how good you are at the game, you would simply stand no chance. I think that's good. And it's good for a couple of reasons. It's good because it presents an impossible challenge at the time, which means players are always going to strive for it to try and make it happen. And that means that players are allowed to push themselves as hard as possible. I think the only important thing is to make sure there's no like RNG, as it were. So like it's basically down to like the player just is overwhelmed, as opposed to it's like hits you 100 damage every hit and you just can't do anything about it. That's important, and that's going to be really fun. And the other part of this is making it so that within the skill ceiling expression, the idea of sort of allowing players to, in the future, when new items come out, or when new methods are discovered, or whatever it is from new bosses, those items might help you in that raid, and suddenly you can break a new barrier to be like the first person to get 42 invocations instead of 41 invocations. And that way we can sort of measure progress in the raid and how far power creep is coming, perhaps, in a sense of like saying, oh, we got a new item and it just instantly lets us do this. That's probably a bit broken. Or if it just gives you a bit of an edge that some people can do it, and now you know that the top skill ceiling of people who can do raids 3 is pushing that, and that's nice to see. You know, it gives you this level of it shows you the skill difference anyway, as it were. So it allows the expression of skill, as opposed to what is currently in a lot of places just quite a lot of RNG, which is not great. Speedrunning is another really interesting topic for this, because this kind of ties in. It's a lot of places right now, it's like 80% RNG, 20% skill. And I say this, once you are at a good level, you have to work to get to that level. But once you're at that level, most places now are like heavy RNG for that player to do well. You have to play well, but your time is reliant on RNG. And I wish it was the other way around. I wish it was 80% player skill and 20% RNG, because you can't remove the RNG entirely, but you don't want it to be overwhelming compared to the rest. So hopefully this is what Invocations does. I think I don't think I addressed Mage Gear. So like in terms of what we do with Mage Gear, and this is because everyone thinks everyone thinks it's going to be a mage heavy raid. I think it will be relatively mage heavy, but if you consider something like Chambers, is Chambers mage heavy, or sorry, is Chambers range heavy? Well, you use range in a lot of rooms, but you also don't. Like, I mean, have a think about the average room. We can run through a CM like Tecton, just purely melee. Crabs, all 3 styles. Scabbing is probably mage. Ice Demon is like Warhammer into range or Surge nowadays. Shamans is range. Vanguards is all 3. Vespula is range, but it's going to become mage with TOA staff. Rope is range or tag and cross. Guardians is melee. Vass is melee and range. Mystics range. Mutt range, sure. And then Olm is Tribid with a range fight at the end, but primarily not range. Just because T-Bow's strong there doesn't mean it's mostly range, which is quite interesting. And we could still make an argument for T-Bow to be the strongest item in Chambers, but it's probably not the most used item in Chambers. And then in TOB, of course, Scythe is like obviously the most used, and it is very melee heavy. I don't think that Raids 3 is going to be particularly mage heavy. I think because you have a choice of where to go and how you tailor your gear and what invocations you can put on, it's probably likely that you are able to mix and match and actually play a setup that you prefer and take it easy with minimal switches. So maybe you have like a 5 or a 6-way mage and then a 3-way range or a 3-way melee or something like this. And if you want to go crazy ham, you can probably bring in more if you want to. But certainly, I don't think that T-Bow and Scythe will be hella devalued in any way by this new update, by the new raid. Certainly they're going to have a place in it. And I think that more or less this trifecta, now that they've kind of agreed to put in the Shadow, the new like really strong mage weapon instead of the Hecker, we're getting this final trifecta of like end game range melee mage items. And so they're all going to have a place inside the top 3 raids. Otherwise, it'd be kind of weird. When we get raids 4, I don't know what to expect. But it feels right that they would do that, and it feels like it would be a bit unfair, I guess, to not allow those weapons to shine. So, sure, I think there might be like one mage-heavy boss or something, and it might have a couple of places it excels and gives you a good time save and good DPS. But in a similar way to Chambers, while it might be the most effective item, it won't be a mage-heavy raid. It will still be a diverse raid, which is good. So, I don't know. I think that's more or less roughly what I wanted to cover. I know it's just kind of a ramble. That was kind of the point. But there we go. If there's some other stuff, I might even make a little follow-up video. I have like a couple of days still until I go there. I probably missed out 1 or 2 things I wanted to talk about, but I figured I'd just give some general info. If you haven't seen much about Raids 3, and at least the invocation talk is worthwhile, because it's the really important part. And it's really interesting to have a think about what potential they have, and even like in the future, they could just add more invocations if they feel like it. There's nothing wrong with it. So, you know, maybe one day everyone has completed max invocation raid, and now at the end of the year, they're like, you know what, screw it, here's another one. Here's another invocation. Here's something to try out, and that would be completely fine. So, this is one other thing that a lot of people are asking, is that will there be a challenge mode variant? I don't think so. I think the invocations themselves will end up being the challenge mode type of raid. So an example of how this could work is if there's 40 invocations, if you put 30 invocations on, you're now eligible for CM-based loot. So you have to have a certain threshold, or you have to have a certain scale difficulty based on the invocations, something like that. So I imagine they'll bring out the pet and the dust in the same go, but honestly, I don't think it matters. If they have a year before they do the dust and whatnot, sure. But again, invocations allow for difficulty scaling. Difficulty scaling equals the idea of CM and hard mode TOBs, so hopefully it's there, but yeah. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But we can hope. So, to reiterate about playtesting stuff, can't stream day 1, can't give any info to you guys beyond I had fun and that's about it. I will, and I saw a Mr. Mammal video not too long ago, thank you chat, who basically recorded some of the TOB playtesting and was allowed to release this after the first TOB completion. Now, I found that really interesting, and it shows like the back end and how people are trying to work it out. And the really, really interesting part here is that the players' sort of the player base like ability since then has risen dramatically. Like, no matter who you are, you've had 2 years to get better at the game. You've had really good, interesting updates that do press players, and players are getting into speedrunning stuff. So the average player like level, I guess you could say, is so much higher right now than it used to be back then. So in terms of comparing, I mean, I think the top comment on that video was something like, I can't believe T-Bow is getting such great use at TOB or something, if I recall. You know, people aren't going to say that anymore. Hopefully they're going to be like, this is really interesting that you're able to go that far, or that you found it this easy or that difficult when you're doing it. There's something more now than just hope you have the right gear and click it. We kind of like, we can work out content quickly, right? So it'll be very interesting one way or the other. Hopefully I can put out that video at some point after release. I will probably be able to say if I got to record anything, but I won't be able to release it, of course. So again, that's kind of it. I hope I didn't repeat anything. I did like one other take of this, which I messed up, so yeah. And then, honestly, there's if you did make it to the end, welcome, congrats. I was thinking about doing some other like rambly type stuff, because there's loads of things in the game that I could essentially ramble on right now. They're kind of some interesting stuff, some fun stuff, but Yeah, stuff on YouTube good, I guess. That's about it. So, if you have, oh no, this is genuine. If you have any like suggestions for what we should bring up at playtests, I asked on Twitter, but I'm also asking here. Feel free to just put it in the comments and let me know what I should be asking about or inquiring about as far as Raids 3. What invocations would you like to see, for example? This is a genuine question because I think the two important things, if you want to like give some info for that I can relay directly, one is what invocations would be good, and again, consider the replayability of the raid, the diversity and the balancing, and lastly, the ability to have the opportunity of skill ceiling expression. Allow the good players who want to push themselves to shine, while if you want to simply grind the raid, you can do without being like hit by really annoying mechanics. And hopefully the more, you know, as much as we can like bring this raid to the front and really make it shine, like, you know, I hope it goes that way. So anyway, no playtesting updates or anything. The most you'll get from me is I had fun and looking forward to it. I think it's going well. That's all you'll get. And to leave it off, no merching advice in this video. We know how that went last time. We don't talk about the spectrals, but I wouldn't go selling your bank for stuff. Again, T-Burst Scythe, they're chilling. Just hold on to them. If you want to buy like mage gear, that's probably pretty standard. But to be honest, most players at high level, they probably already have the mage gear. So if you got spare GP, do your thing. If you don't, be careful. Don't sell shit. Don't panic. It's always fine. And if you really want to invest something, probably just buy like supplies like brews and restores, because everybody needs brews and restores. So that's pretty much all I've got. Hopefully you found it kind of interesting, rambly stuff. And again, leave the comment on what kind of rambly shit you want to see, and or if you have ideas for invocations, and hopefully we'll come up with something nice. Yeah, cheers guys, see you later, take care.